When people think about the NBA in the 2000s, one uncomfortable fact keeps coming up over and over.
One of the things that we really benefited from was we were in a historically bad Eastern Conference.
The Western Conference wasn't just stronger than the East, it was on a whole different level. Most seasons, there wasn't even a question. The West had more star players, deeper teams, and many squads that could compete for a title. Night after night, their games felt like playoff matchups, even before the playoffs began.
We were in a historically bad Eastern Conference. And all through those years, we really knew the target is the Western Conference team. There was nobody in the East who was really going to be in the way.
Yeah, right.
Just look at the rosters from that time, and the pattern is clear. The West was full of MVP candidates, all-NBA players, and strong playoff teams every year. Meanwhile, the East usually had only a few serious contenders at the top.
No, I think the East has been pretty weak here the last couple of years.
But when you looked further down the standings, the gap was impossible to ignore. Anyone who followed the league in the 2000s knows this isn't disrespect. It's just how the conferences were structured. This is where the talk about Shannon Sharpe gets tricky, especially during LeBron James' prime, when he was dominating the East year after year.
The worst loss of the season, a 30-point beating in Game 3 for the Boston Celtics.
Number 5, to Murray Carroll.
Number 7,
The media around him was very protective, and many people in the league didn't challenge the story. But over time, things start to change.
And this Cavs team with Donovan is trying to do what they're doing in an Eastern Conference that's significantly more competitive than what we had.
As LeBron moves into the later part of his career, that tight control over his story is starting to fade, and more analysts are willing to openly discuss the level of competition he faced. Now, putting opinions aside and looking at the facts, from 2011 to 2018, the years LeBron reached the finals every season from the East, the teams with the best records in the NBA tell a very clear story.
What is it about this man that people feel they need to take shots at him, Joe? Every chance they get, nobody passes an opportunity to take a shot at LeBron. And I just want to know why.
The top 6 teams with over a 60% winning percentage were: first, the San Antonio Spurs; second, the Golden State Warriors; third, Oklahoma City; fourth, Miami; fifth, Houston; and sixth, the LA Clippers. Out of these 6 elite teams, 5 were in the Western Conference.
73-9. Guys, take a look at that. It still looks weird.
Yeah, that's only single digit.
In the 2-7 spot, look at the Spurs there. One of the, the winningest number 2 seed in league history.
That fact alone shows where the real challenge was back then. The squads constantly fighting for dominance and going through brutal playoff battles. Most of them were in the West. Just think about that group: Golden State, Oklahoma City, the Spurs, Houston, and the Clippers. These teams were knocking each other out in intense playoff matchups just to make it to the finals.
Joining his teammate from the Hawks at guard, Kyle Korver.
Meanwhile, in the East, LeBron often faced players like Roy Hibbert and Kyle Lowry. Both were solid, no doubt. But the overall depth and star power in the East just didn't compare to what the West had to deal with every postseason. And to be clear, this isn't an attack on LeBron James at all.
The target is the Western Conference team. There was nobody in the East who was really going to be in the way.
Yeah, right.
The gap between the conferences existed long before LeBron's final streak began. Back in 2007, Bill Simmons even joked that the Eastern Conference should almost be abolished because the difference between East and West had become so huge. The imbalance was clear even then, and the numbers from the 2000s made it stand out even more.
These guys are all role players. They're going to have 3 or 4, not 1, not 2, but probably 3 guys who play out of.
At that time, the East wasn't officially called LeBron's conference, but everyone in the league knew what was going on. Compared to the West, the East just didn't measure up. The West had deeper rosters, more star players, and many more teams that could compete at the highest level. Year after year, Most of the top teams in the NBA came straight from the West.
I cut off the game midway through the second quarter en route to Cleveland, outscoring Boston 40-13. And you know what I did? I'm not ashamed to admit it. I actually ran out the house and I went and got some White Castle.
Now, let's revisit what former Cavaliers executive David Griffin was saying about that era. Because the numbers don't whisper, they scream the truth. From 2011 to 2018, the gap between the conferences was impossible to ignore. During that stretch, 65 teams in the league reached 50 wins. But here's the striking part. 39 of those teams were from the Western Conference. That's not a small difference. That's a huge imbalance. And if you raise the bar even higher, the pattern stays the same. In the same period, 39 teams won 55 games or more, and once again, the West dominated. 27 of those 39 elite teams were in the Western Conference.
No, I think the East has been pretty weak here the last couple of years. This year is probably one of the strongest years in terms of deeper teams. You're talking about Toronto as being better, Boston, but they lost, due to a couple of their guys. Milwaukee, they have a dynamic player on their team, but I'm not really believing in their team.
Night after night, the toughest competition kept piling up in the West. And when you look at only the very best teams, the picture gets even clearer. From 2011 to 2018, just 14 teams in the NBA won 60 games or more, but 10 of those were in the Western Conference. That shows exactly where the deepest pressure and toughest competition were during that era. One of the biggest advantages of being in the East at the time was that teams could control the pace of the season.
I believe the champion will come out of the West, but what I'm saying is the East is better because Cleveland is not as good as they were in the last couple of years.
But
I'm saying Cleveland has definitely gotten worse, but I don't think that the East has gotten that much better.
LeBron's teams in Miami and Cleveland often had the luxury of cruising through parts of the regular season without facing the non-stop pressure that Western teams dealt with. Out West, the margin for error was tiny. Losing 3 games in a row could make a team tumble in the standings almost overnight, dropping from second seed to 6 because the race was so tight that in the East, the same losing streak usually didn't cause panic. The top of the conference simply wasn't as crowded. Because of this, the regular season had a completely different kind of intensity depending on the conference. Western teams had to treat every stretch of games like a survival test just to secure playoff spots, while several Eastern teams, including LeBron's squads, were clearly managing the season with the playoffs as the main goal. Take LeBron's second run in Cleveland as an example. In 2015, the Cavs finished with 53 wins. In 2016, 57 wins. In 2017, 51 wins. And in 2018, exactly 50 wins. Not once during that stretch did Cleveland hit 60 wins, despite the star power on those rosters. A fact that still surprises many today. Take the 2017 Cavaliers as a perfect example. That team finished with just 51 wins, and many analysts called them one of the most underachieving super teams in recent memory. But the issue wasn't talent, it was the strategy. From the start, the roster was built with the playoffs as the main focus. All season long, the message was repeated everywhere. Wait until the playoffs, they'll flip the switch. And that's exactly what happened. Cleveland dominated the Eastern Conference, losing only 1 game on their way to the NBA Finals. Look at that roster: LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, Kyle Korver, Channing Frye, Tristan Thompson, Iman Shumpert, Richard Jefferson. The team had experience, shooting, and playoff knowledge across the board. From the starters to the bench, they were stacked. When you compare the competition in the East, the path to the finals often looked more like a clear runway than a battlefield. For example, in the 2017 Eastern Conference Finals, the Cavaliers faced the Boston Celtics, but Boston's star, Isaiah Thomas, went down with an injury by Game 3, instantly shifting the series. Situations like that show one of the biggest advantages Eastern teams had. They could manage the season's pace and still stay in position. Meanwhile, Western teams battled brutal schedules every year just to hold their playoff spots. Now, imagine that same 2017 Cavaliers roster playing in the Western Conference. Suddenly, their playoff path looks completely different. In the first round alone, They might have run straight into the LA Clippers with Blake Griffin, Chris Paul, DeAndre Jordan, and Jamal Crawford. That opening matchup would have been tougher than several series teams faced in the East. If Cleveland somehow got past that. The next round could have been the Golden State Warriors. Even if they pulled off an upset there, the Western Conference Finals might have featured the San Antonio Spurs, who won 61 games that season, or the Houston Rockets. That bracket felt like stepping into a heavyweight fight every round. This is the heart of David Griffin's argument, and it still resonates today. When analysts like Shannon Sharpe build the case for LeBron as the GOAT, this context often gets left out. The East didn't carry the same nightly pressure as the West. Back around 2018, this was already being discussed openly. Analysts like Skip Bayless and Tracy McGrady pointed out the same thing.